Hello, I'm Peter Parfitt and welcome to part 2 of the assembly of the UJK Technology Professional Writer Table. In this part we're going to complete the assembly, including the installation of the writer elevator with a writer in it. We're going to assemble the professional fence and put in some dust collection arrangements. Let's get straight at it. Now, whenever you get a brand new piece of machinery which has cast iron beds, there are a couple of things you need to do. The very first thing is to go around all the edges with your hands very carefully and just feel, in case it's been bashed in transit and there's any little sharp bits or anything which you need to knock off with a file. When you've done that, clean off all of the oil which is used to protect it whilst it's in transit, and then after you've cleaned off that oil, I use this Liberon lubricating wax, and I put it on fairly generously and then wipe it off. This has two important functions. The first, it stops the cast iron from going rusty, and the second is that it does help the smooth passage of wood across the surface. We're on steps 1 and 2 of the assembly of the top. The top's not yet fixed to the stand, and before I put the top in place, I put these 10 Phillips screws with the nut in place through the area where the writer elevator's going to go. Now we've got to fix the top in place by putting 6 of these screws and washers in to the appropriate places through the frame and into the top itself. And that's all of those tight now. It's now time to get the writer mounted in the table. Now, some of you may have the table insert. With that, you rely on the writer's plunge mechanism to get your height adjustment. But I've gone for the writer elevator, which means the writer plunge mechanism is fixed and locked, and you then have a mechanism on the writer elevator for doing the adjustments very simply from the top of the table. And these are the instructions that I'm going to follow now. The first thing we're told to do is to raise the mechanism to create as much space under here as possible, so that we can then undo the 4 clamping screws. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 each corner, and they've got a hex socket in each of them. And when those are undone, that allows you then to slide these locking pieces out of the way and then remove the universal base plate. And it's this universal base plate that we want to fix to the bottom of our writer. Now, in order to fix the universal base plate, you need to remove the sub-base from your writer. The universal base plate is very simple to install. There's a table in the instructions which tells you which of these many holes should be used with your particular writer. And I've looked it up for my writer, and I know exactly which holes to use. And when you've found your holes, insert the screws and then tighten them up. And then just make sure everything's tight, and then that's done. Now, for my particular writer to fit into the writer elevator, I have to remove the handles. So I've done that, and I've kept the screws safely in a bag together with the screws that go with the sub-base. And just in case one day I want to return this writer to normal use. And the next thing is to plunge the writer fully and lock it off. And with this writer, I can also, as a belt and braces means, lock this little screw here, so that really does hold it in place. And now we're going to place it in the writer elevator. Now, you need to adjust the writer so that none of its bits stick out really beyond the chain here, because it might not then fit through the hole in your tabletop. So I've got mine like that. I'm now going to tighten it up, tightening those 4 screws nice and tight. Now, Axminster do supply all the relevant hex keys that you might need for these operations, but I like to use my handy dandy little gadget here, because it is absolutely brilliant. And I'm sorry, chaps at Axminster, you're probably going to have to stock them now. And the next stage is to insert the elevator into the hole in the top, and remember, put the wire for the router through first. So we do this very carefully. Now you've got to remember which way you want things orientated, because I've got my table set up such that I've got my slot here for my mitre fence, and I've got my wheel that I push just here to move the table. So therefore, I'm over on this side. So therefore, on the router elevator assembly, I want the gubbins that does all the action of moving the router up and down to be closest to me. So I'm going to insert that in there very carefully, very gently. Now, to get the surface of the elevator flush with the surface of the table, proceed as follows. First, undo the two center grub screws so that they play no part in the first part of the operation. Then, taking a tool like this, engineering square, go to each corner one at a time and adjust the grub screws at that corner until it's flush. Go all the way around once and then repeat, make sure it's flush. And then turn your attention to these center grub screws and adjust them so they just touch that screw which is underneath. We're going to secure everything in place using the two screws provided. And that's done. One more final check and I'm happy. We're now going to start the assembly of the professional fence which comes with the kit. And the first stage is to fix on the two fence fixing brackets, one on either side of the router table. And these are each held on with 4 of these hex screws. Now our next stage is to put 3 of these square nuts through the channel here, and these are going to be used to help fix these pieces, which in the instructions are also called a fence fixing bracket, but I'm going to call them fence scale bracket because there's a scale there. In order to fix them, we're going to use these little 6mm bolts with washers, and there's 3 at each end. And then start with the middle one, and you'll find then the rest will be terribly easy to do. I'm then going to get this so it's in line with the top of the table, and I'll do the same at the other end. Next we take the fence itself, 6 of these T-bolts, 6 large washers, 6 knobs, and the 2 wooden fence faces. And the first job is to put these bolts in place through the 6 holes which you see on the fence. You push the bolt through from the other side and put a washer on, and then loosely attach this knob. And that's when all 6 are on, we then turn this round, and we're then going to slide on these wooden face pieces over those T-bolts. And then you can tighten up. So that's those done up. I've just brought these 2 face pieces together for now. I know they will be opened apart later. And the next stage is to locate these 2 large locking knobs and a washer for each, and they will then go through the back here into that nut that we inserted in the channel earlier on. Next we have to move the fence forward so that the front face lines up exactly with a pair of engraved lines, and I've put a bit of permanent green felt tip into there to try and highlight those for the camera. And the idea is we do this as part of the calibration process. And when the front of the fence is on those engraved lines, we then tighten it up, like so. We now loosen the locking knob underneath here, which keeps the scale in place, and we're going to move this so that the 0 mark lines up exactly with the front face of the fence. And then when it's there, we lock it off. And we do that on both sides. Next we're going to attach the extractor hood, and you just undo the two central knobs here on the back of the fence, and then slip the hood in like so, and then tighten these up again. Right, we're now going to install the dust shield, which goes over this part at the front of the fence. And in order to do this, we're going to slide a pair of these T-bolts, it's the last of the T-bolts, on. We're then going to place these spacers on. And if you look at these carefully, you'll find that on one side is a rectangular raised area, and on the other side there is a raised area which has curved ends. It's the curved ends which is going to fit inside the dust shield, and it's the rectangular side which fits over the T-bolt and into the slot. Then we place the dust shield on, and then a washer on each side, and finally the knob. And that's done. At this stage the instructions tell us to assemble the mitre fence, but I've purchased the better quality mitre fence, which I think is just the job for a professional router table like this. I'm just about to fit the dust extraction box, which fits under the router table, with 6mm screws. Now at the front of the box is an access port to get at the router, and that's held shut with a magnet. At the side here there's an adjustable air inlet which allows you to improve the airflow past the underside of the router, which may make dust extraction more efficient. There's a port here where you would connect this arrangement, which has a 100mm connector here to go to your extractor, and this extension hose which goes to the back of the professional fence, meaning that you're collecting dust from both below and above the router. And then at the side here is an entry port for the cable to the router. Now I'm standing at the front of the router table, and therefore I want this access door to be on this side. You do need to remember that. Now I'm going to have to cut off the moulded plug that comes with my router and then fit a normal plug. That's it in place. Well, it's time to test it out. I've just got a simple Ovolo cutter in there, and I've just got a gash piece of wood. I'm just going to run it past the cutter and see how it goes. Well, that was pretty easy, beautifully smooth, but this isn't the review. Well, that's the test run done, but you do need to look at my review video about this whole UJK technology professional router table. Now I'm inserting this here in this second video just to let you know that I've actually created a third tweaks video which just shows you one or two things that I could have done better had I realized when I bought everything from Axminster that I needed to buy one or two other things. So take a look at that before you finish the construction of your router table. As far as the assembly goes, there were no real issues. The rest of it went together beautifully, and I must say at this sort of quick glance it really is nice, and I really like this cast iron table. But wait for my review. Thank you very much for watching these two videos on the assembly. Take care. Bye-bye.